Today I'm going to be speaking about wellness and multiple sclerosis and how much wellness and spirituality has helped me cope with my autoimmune disease. When I speak about wellness, I'm essentially speaking about the combination of spiritual, wellness, holistic modalities as a way to cope with living with an autoimmune disease. So I am using wellness as like an umbrella term to refer to all the kind of wellnessy woo-woo things that I like to do, and I really hope that you'll enjoy this video. What I do just want to quickly say before I get into this video is that while I am on Ocrevus, which is a Western medication which helps treat my MS, I also really value using other alternative healing modalities. I also love using herbalism, supplements, meditation, yogic practice, asana practice, pranayama, all these kinds of things as a way to help my healing, paying close attention to my sleep. All these kinds of things work together, and I think that the most important aspects of healing is to have a holistic approach to healing. So when I ignore all of my wellness things like meditation and sleep, I can see how much it impacts my everyday life. And so I don't just rely on Ocrevus to help me cope with my MS, but I rely on a holistic approach to healing. And I really do value alternative healing modalities like Reiki and meditation and all these kinds of things that I will get into in this video. I truly believe that healing is holistic, and I can see how much it helps me, and so I really live by these tools. I think it's super important to have a spiritual practice when you're diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, because being diagnosed with a disease really brings up a lot of emotions, sadness, and honestly feelings of you're really faced with your mortality. And obviously everyone has, to some or other degree, faced their mortality. But I feel like when you are diagnosed with a disease, it's much more prominent because you're also living in a body that feels very precarious. Like sometimes I feel my body feels weak. And as a result, you kind of face life differently to the way you lived pre-diagnosis. And in some ways, it's a really positive thing because you start taking care of yourself, you start taking better care of yourself. And then on the other hand, it can also be quite daunting. It can also be quite an emotional roller coaster because the way you look at life is different, and also the way you look at like your long-term future life is different because you might have a lot more fear than you had before. So I do think that it's important to have like a healthy state of mind, mind, body, soul, when you're working with dealing with an autoimmune disease. And this is honestly the case for any disease. I'm obviously only speaking about my experience with MS, but I think that anyone who has experienced an autoimmune disease, any kind of illness or sickness, will be able to relate to this to some or other degree. So I really hope you keep watching even if you don't have MS. First wellness tip is yoga, and I know that a lot of people get really irritated when someone recommends yoga when they're struggling with an autoimmune disease or even any kind of sickness. I know that it's kind of like something that gets just thrown out to people and that can frustrate some people, but in my personal experience, yoga has been absolutely transformational in my life, and it's such an important feature and such an important way that I cope with my disease. It also helps me cope with my mental health. My emotional well-being is radically improved when I have yoga in my life, and so I'm really, really grateful to the practice of yoga. And yoga is such an important practice for a number of different reasons. So when you have an autoimmune disease, you might experience a lot of body pain, aches and pains, back pain, especially with MS. So yoga really helps keep the body limber, it really helps the spine, it really helps you reduce pain. And that's like on a practical level. For example, if you have a lot of lower back pain, then the movements where you're stretching your hamstrings and really loosening your body, your hips, anything that like is contracted when you have lower back pain will be improved just based off of the stretching movements. And then you have more of like the chronic fatigue aspects. So everyone knows that movement is so important. So just by practicing the asana, you'll be able to radically improve your chronic fatigue and all of that kind of stuff. And then you have like the spiritual aspects of yoga with regards to meditation, pranayama, all that kind of stuff. So when you are kind of in the darkness, the sadness of living with an autoimmune disease, you have this ability to connect to a higher power, to connect to God, the universe, to understand like the interconnectedness of everything, to understand the oneness. And that really helps you feel like you're not alone. I think it's super important when it comes to living with an autoimmune disease, because you can feel quite isolated, you can feel quite alone. You might even have thoughts of, why is this happening to me? You know, all that kind of thing. And having a spiritual practice like yoga, being able to meditate, to spend time with the divine, is a way that you can access like the higher meaning of the experience. It also helps you cope. So for example, when I'm really nervous and I'm getting my injections, my infusions, the MRI, I'm going through these really tough procedures, it feels so amazing to have practices that ground and help me. So I have breathing techniques for when I'm really anxious about the injections. I have meditation techniques to help me through the like 2-hour, 3-hour long MRIs. It really, really makes a fundamental difference in my mental health, and then also in like the physical aspect of my body. So I struggle with a lot of back pain. So like I said, the movements, the asana practice really helps me have a strong body, a strong back, for example, with meditation. And that all helps me in my everyday life. And I like feeling like I'm part of something greater than myself. And when I feel down about having a disease, I feel like these practices really ground me and honestly just make me feel safe. It's kind of like a hug from God, is what yoga feels like to me. It honestly feels like I'm being hugged and held by God, held by the divine, and it really makes a massive, massive difference in my life. Just to give a little rundown, I said that yoga helps you cope with life and death. It helps you cope with pain management, and then you also have the wellness positivity aspect that it helps with. And then I said, and I think that this is a really important one, don't join doom and gloom Facebook groups. And I really believe in this one. So I do think that it's important to have community. What I mean about don't join doom and gloom Facebook groups is more about making sure that the general consensus of the group is positive and uplifting as opposed to negative, because this is going to greatly impact the way you relate to having multiple sclerosis. If you kind of have a relationship with your body that is filled with harmony and love, you'll treat your body differently. So how are other people around you who have MS, how are they treating their bodies? How are they treating themselves, and how are they treating those around you? How do they relate to having MS? Because this is super important, because it will impact the way you relate to having the disease. When I was first diagnosed with MS, I joined a lot of societies and Facebook groups, and the general consensus was kind of negative, and that really impacted and scared me. So I also feel it depends where you are in your MS journey. If you're newly diagnosed, I really wouldn't recommend you joining like extremely negative Facebook groups, because it will scare you, and you want to be around people that are uplifting. You want to be around people who are helping you cope with the disease, not kind of staying in the darkness of the diagnosis. It's not an issue if you are in the darkness of diagnosis, but with that I would highly recommend working with a trained professional therapist as opposed to people on a Facebook group. So it's kind of like you are allowed to be upset and you're allowed to be sad, but do so with someone who can actually help you, someone who can give you professional advice. If you're going to people on a Facebook group and you know they're making you spiral, you might have a symptom and they're like, that means you're gonna die, you know, all these kinds of things. You just want to be very careful about who you're speaking to and how they are relating to their disease and how they treat you. You want to be around people who uplift you and people who don't scare you into thinking that one of your symptoms is going to be like absolutely terrible and you won't get help. Be around people who can support you and leave the like diagnosis kinds of things to the professionals, to your neurologist, and then also to a therapist. My next tip after the doom and gloom Facebook groups and not joining them or being involved in like a negative community is communication with your loved ones. It's really important that you communicate with your loved ones and explain to them what you need and how they can treat you. I know that it can be really challenging to be speaking about your disease or to be opening up all the time. So I would really explain this to your community, to your loved ones, tell them how you feel, open up and share what it is that you're going with. You don't have to do this all the time. You can have a specific, like monthly check-in or whatever works for you. I know I personally don't always like speaking about my disease. It makes me uncomfortable and it also makes me feel vulnerable and sometimes really sad. And so when I do open up to my community about what I'm going through, I really want them to be able to hold space and to do so in a loving manner. But they can only do that if they understand how sensitive of a topic it is. So I like to explain to my loved ones, and then I like to actually just open up and say, look, this is really hard for me to say, but this is what I'm dealing with. And I think it is important to share with your loved ones, share with your close community. If they don't have a disease, then they won't know how to coexist with you. And it's important that they do so in a way that is conducive and healing for both you and for them. So that's quite an important step, is to not isolate yourself, because I know it's easy to isolate yourself and to not open up about your experiences, but isolation can actually make the painful experiences even worse, and it can make you feel even worse. There's nothing more beautiful than opening up and sharing about how you feel and just allowing the people in your life to do what they do best, which is love you and hold space for you. And in order for them to truly love you, they need to know what it is that you're going through. So it is important to communicate with your loved ones. You don't always have to be positive. You're allowed to have hard days. You're allowed to have dark days. You're allowed to be in a lot of pain. But do so in a way that the person who is on the receiving end when you're speaking about all that you're going through is in a position to hold space for you and to help you through it, as opposed to, making you spiral even more. And they shouldn't add to the negativity. They should kind of uplift you and be a source and a container for you to express the pain that you're going through. Supplements to improve your daily life. And supplements, you have general supplements that everyone should be taking, and then you have supplements that people with MS should be taking more of and should be careful about. So for example, vitamin D. A lot of people that have MS also have vitamin D deficiency, and it's important to just speak to your neurologist and speak to professionals. In that case, I would highly recommend taking a vitamin D supplement, magnesium, zinc, vitamin C, copper, all the things that are really important for you to live a healthy life and to have a healthy body. Vitamin B12, just like the general supplements, and then making sure that everything's okay. If you suffer from chronic fatigue, making sure that you have enough iron in your diet or taking an iron supplement. So it's just about making sure that you're having enough of those supplements. Then my next tip, and this is linked a little bit to the supplements, but this is like herbal remedies. I highly recommend dandelion, nettle. I highly recommend cordyceps, mushrooms, tonics and tinctures. Cordyceps really help with your energy. Reishi helps with your sleep. Dandelion helps with energy. Nettle helps with energy. You really want to get accustomed to working with plants, working with plant medicine as a way to help facilitate your everyday life. If you struggle with sleeping and you know you're chronically fatigued, then taking your sleep into consideration. So then I would recommend chamomile, I would recommend passion fruit flower. So just getting to know your body, getting to know your symptoms, and working with herbal remedies with regards to that. So when it comes to pain management, I would highly recommend St. John's wort. St. John's wort is incredible for nerves and nerve damage, which is exactly what people with MS struggle with. So if you have chronic backache, things like that, I would recommend making a herbal remedy with St. John's wort, a herbal infused oil, and rubbing that on the pain area. A lot of inflammation, drinking turmeric lattes, rubbing turmeric on the body. Turmeric and ginger together help with inflammation. Waking up, drinking ginger tea helps with inflammation. So you just want to kind of get to know your symptoms and then use herbal remedies as a way to help you work through those symptoms. And obviously I am on Ocrevus, so I'm not recommending these supplements and herbal remedies be a replacement for Ocrevus. All I'm saying is that work together. Next really important tip is going to be sleep. Sleep is obviously so important. Everyone knows the importance of sleep. There's so many studies detailing the importance of sleep and how sleep helps deal with inflammation. It honestly heals your body, all these kinds of things. So again, if you have trouble sleeping and you know you have chronic fatigue, taking sleep very seriously, drinking chamomile, passion fruit flower, and all those kinds of remedies to help you sleep, getting off your devices, reducing stress before nighttime, which will allow you to have a really good sleep. And you can also use valerian root to help you sleep, and limiting your light exposure. So I like to put my lights off at around 6 p.m, 7 when it starts getting dark. I like to have really minimal lights, use candles. All of this kind of sets your system. You can change your devices like your Kindle, your phone, all those kinds of things to night mode. That just changes the light, so instead of it being like a really hectic bright light, it softens the light. It kind of has like an orange glow over it. That's really important for sleep. So my next tip is spending time in nature. And obviously this is super important because nature is so healing. Nature is not somewhere we go, it is within us, it is inside of us. So to understand that there's no separation between us and the outside world also adds to this oneness and this feeling of being like interconnected with everything. And spending time in nature is a reminder of that. And nature is very healing. So spending time walking barefoot on the earth, allowing the earth to heal and replenish you, spending time breathing in the fresh air, spending time in the sunlight so that you're getting that vitamin D. Spending time in nature just honestly improves your quality of life, and it makes you feel so happy. You never feel like you regret spending a day outside. And I think it's important to not be too connected to social media and to too much like technology all the time. You need to have a break, and you need to be able to hear yourself think, and you can do so by going for long walks in nature, being outside, and really just letting nature do its thing and heal you. I think that that is so important, and because it heals your quality of life, it will also help you cope with living with the disease. And then now I want to go into spirituality and the spiritual side of having a disease. And I really think that this is important, to have a connection with the divine, or to have a connection with God. So I'll give you a couple of my favorite examples of how I cultivate this connection with the divine. So one of them is through cacao ceremonies. Cacao is super important if you have an autoimmune disease or if you have MS. And honestly, cacao is important for every single person, I truly believe. Cacao is such an incredible plant medicine. It's not psychoactive, it's not a psychedelic, it's just this beautiful, pure, raw chocolate. And you can get some ceremonial grade cacao. Make sure that you're sourcing from an ethical brand. And cacao is incredible because it releases oxytocin, it releases dopamine, and all of this will help your mental health with regards to having a disease. But it doesn't give you the crash like processed chocolate would give you. It's raw chocolate, so it's not like the processed chocolate that you get in the store. And I would highly recommend getting an ethical, ceremonial grade cacao. And when you drink cacao, it's also the medicine of embodiment. So I really like having cacao ceremonies, and this could be a way that you could cultivate more healing in your life and also help you cope with your disease. So the ceremony is the container, and the cacao is the embodiment of the intention that you want to invoke or embody within yourself. So you could have the intention for healing, and then you could create a ceremonial container where you drink cacao, you connect with the medicine, and you really embody that affirmation of healing or of processing your disease or whatever it is that you're working through. Then keeping in line with like the spiritual aspects and how spirituality can really help you cope with your disease is that you can do a lot of things like journaling. You can have a meditation practice, which I already spoke about previously when I spoke about yoga. You can have a breathwork practice. You can have a tarot card practice. You can pull oracle cards daily. You can work with a pendulum. All of these things are ways that really improve the quality of life. All of these tools are ways that you can improve your quality of life. They're all these like little, I kind of see them as like little North Stars, connecting me to my biggest North Star, which is God or the universe, and finding practices that you can do every single day to help you remember that you are part of something bigger than yourself. And so instead of being really micro and focused on your disease and maybe like the woos and the pain of that, you can focus on the macro, which is God, which is source, which is the divine, and having these little things spread about your day to help you connect to that. So all of these tools, some of them tangible, some of them more esoteric, are ways that I like to use wellness, or the umbrella term wellness, as a way to help me cope with living with a disease. So we have the tangible, practical things that you can do, like have a good sleep schedule, take herbal supplements, taking vitamins, asana practice. Then we have connecting to a positive community, not joining doom and gloom Facebook groups, and connecting to your loved ones. Basically just a multifaceted way that we can approach healing and we can approach dealing with having a disease. And you have like your tangible things that you can do every day, taking cordyceps, lion's mane, working with herbal supplements, connecting to a community, spending time in nature. And then you have the more esoteric things like having ceremonies, connecting to the moon, all these things connecting you to your North Star, which is God, the universe, or like the divine, feeling connected to everything, understanding that this is temporary, that you are loved, that you're held, and all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'm sending you lots of love wherever you are in the world.